Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian on the morning of the election of Donald Trump as the nation's 45th president, and we are meeting with retired Marine Corps Major General Arnold Punaro, who has a consultancy, the Punaro Group, but also spent 24 years on Capitol Hill, author of what is sure to be a best-selling book on war and politics that you debuted, and we had an opportunity to sit down, and for folks who are interested, that interview is going to be up in a little while. But I thought I would talk to you because you've been involved in virtually every defense transition over the past 4 decades, roughly, right? If you include your time on the Hill and everything else. Obviously, we've got a bit of a surprise outcome here in the election. What are some of the things that the Trump group has got to keep in mind as it goes through this transition process?
Well, Vago, I would say the number one thing was the president-elect, Mr. Trump, got off to a very strong, positive start last night with his message. He came across as a statesman. He came across as a uniter. He said we've all got to work together. And when it comes to national security, we've always believed that politics stops at the water's edge. And with the challenges that he's going to face as president, he's going to need a bipartisan support for those policies. And so that's a very good first start.
But partisanship has been something that has ruled the day up on the Hill. It has extended to the defense committees as well. There are some Democrats who will point out that, hey, look, in the 2008 election, Mitch McConnell had that conference call. The answer was niet to everything that Obama was going to do to make sure that his presidency was failed. McConnell did actually say that. What are some of the incentives here to get both sides to come together in this case, as opposed to continuing the acrimony, given it was a very, very acrimonious campaign?
I would say the incentive is, first of all, our men and women are in harm's way. The troops are in war. They're deployed overseas. They're putting their lives on the line for the American people every day. We owe it to them to work in a bipartisan way and ensure they aren't in a fair fight. Number two, the American people deserve it and they demand it. They want change. They don't want that kind of bickering. They don't want that kind of partisanship. And the challenges we face overseas, the threats, the challenges we face at home, no one party and no one person can solve it on their own. So I think we all have to work together, and that's what transitions are all about. How do you put in place the right approaches, the right people, the right team that understands that's how you've got to approach it to get the results that the American people demand and deserve?
Do you think it's going to be a challenge as somebody who has also been involved in the recruitment of talent sometimes in terms of, hey, this would be a really, really good guy to be in that job, guy or gal? Do you think that it's going to present a challenge given so many prominent Republican defense players sort of waved off on serving in a Trump administration earlier in the year?
Here's why I don't think it will be. I said about Mitt Romney when he was running, one of the very positive things was he's a businessman. They know that you have to have the very best talent and the very best people to be successful. I believe Mr. Trump believes that as well. And the people that work in our area in the national security field, they're motivated by doing what's right for the country. So I think a lot of people that might have been somewhat skeptical, if they're asked to serve and if they're the right person to serve, they'll put that skepticism behind and get behind the president-elect and help him do what needs to be done for our national security.
From a defense standpoint, what do you think should be 100-day goals? What are some of the priority items you think the administration's got to get out of the gate on?
Well, obviously, and they recognize this, they've got to recognize the fact that our men and women are in a firefight overseas and that we've got a terrorist threat that is a risk to our country, it's a risk to our allies, and it's something they have to deal with every day. Number two, they have to be prepared for the unexpected. In just about every presidential transition that I've seen in the last 40 years, there's always something unexpected that pops up in the first 100 days. And so they need to be prepared for that. The number three thing is they're going to have to send very quickly after he's inaugurated on January 20th a recommended budget to Congress. Now, the good news there is he recognizes the sequester has been a disaster for our military readiness. He realizes that we need to try to get the budget back to the levels that the military says we need to implement our military strategy. And that's going to be tough to put together and then tough to convince the Congress to move forward with it.
Isn't the debt discussion, though, given that the debt limit, the spending limit has to be increased in March, does that present a complicating factor if you're also trying to get a big increase for defense spending, even in a Congress that's both on the House and Senate side controlled by Republicans?
Well, I don't think the Congress, whether it's controlled by the Republicans or Democrat, they've never defaulted on the good faith and credit of the United States of America, and I don't see that happening again. As a businessman, I don't see Mr. Trump allowing that to happen. So that's why you're going to have a package. You're going to have a compromise that looks at, where do we want the deficit to be? What do we need for defense? What are the priorities that he has for his policies? He's talked about infrastructure, which is desperately needed. So they're going to have to work together in a bipartisan way to put that kind of package together. And I would hope both parties in Congress would resist the instinct that you brought up earlier that, oh, well, we're just going to kind of throw our hands up and not help. That's just the wrong answer.
Arnold, thanks very much, and look forward to talking to you throughout the process.
Great. Thank you, Vago.